If you suffer from PMS, moodiness, hot flashes, and irritability, you might be struggling with hormonal imbalance. Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Health Break. Dr. Mariza Snyder joins me today to talk about naturally balancing our hormones for better mental and physical health. Hi, I'm Dr. Nafisa Sikandri, a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in anxiety-based disorders. I created the Mental Health Break podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you prioritize your mental health. Mental illness can cost you time and money. Ignoring your symptoms will only make the problems worse. Taking time out of your busy day to dedicate to improving your mental health can lead to long-term health and wellness. In this podcast, each week you'll learn tips, tricks, and proven strategies to help you regain control of your life, all while prioritizing your mental health. If you want to improve your life, regain control of your mental health, and feel empowered, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transforming Anxiety course, an online, self-paced anxiety course to help you manage and control your anxiety from the comfort, privacy, and convenience of your own home. Learn how to transform your anxiety in just 6 short weeks. Course registration is now open. To learn more, visit transforminganxiety.com/course. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Mariza Snyder, who will talk to us about the natural solutions for hormonal balance. Let me briefly introduce her before I bring her on. Dr. Mariza Snyder is a functional practitioner, women's hormone expert, and the author of 8 books. The newest book, The Essential Oils Menopause Solution, focuses on solutions for women in perimenopause and menopause. And the #1 national bestselling book, The Essential Oils Hormone Solution, focuses on balancing women's hormones naturally. Other bestselling books are The Smart Mom's Guide to Essential Oils and the DASH Diet Cookbook. For the past 12 years, she has lectured at wellness centers, conferences, and corporations on hormone health, essential oils, nutrition, and detoxification. She has been featured on Dr. Oz, Oprah Magazine, Fox News Health, Mind Body Green, and many publications. Dr. Mariza is also the host of the top-rated Essentially You podcast with over 3 million downloads designed to empower women to become the CEO of their health. Hi, Dr. Mariza. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you about hormonal health today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here myself. Thank you for having me.
I just shared a little bit about your background, but can you share a little bit more about your training, your expertise, and then what led you to specialize in hormonal health, especially for women?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's so vivid, that moment where I knew not only did I have to figure out what was going on for my body, but also figure out what was happening for other women's body. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. I was sitting outside of another doctor's office, a woman who had specialized in hormones. And it was after my appointment with her, I had known I had had some major hormone issues. And about a month prior to that, maybe even 3 weeks prior to that, when I was trying to get up in the morning, trying to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, I literally could not. My ability to get up out of bed was hindered by severe chronic fatigue. And when your chronic fatigue gets so bad, one of the most activated hormones to help drive a lot of that is cortisol. And what a lot of people don't know is cortisol is involved in us waking up every day, like going from like kind of opening your eyes to like getting out of bed. That is what we call the cortisol awakening response. And when you have such serious chronic fatigue, that response doesn't work anymore. You cannot move. You cannot get out of bed. And that was what I was experiencing. Now at the time, I had no idea. I didn't know how any of this worked. And I kind of figured out that my hormones were definitely whacked out, like something wasn't right. And I was just 30 years old. I had to figure out what was going on. So fast forward back to me being in the car at 10 a.m. And I had just come out of the office. And one of the things I really wanted to know was what was happening with my hormones, what was happening within the endocrine system. And sure enough, everything was off. All of my hormones were off, my reproductive hormones, my stress hormones, everything. And so I was really excited to figure out like, what could I do? Like, how was I going to solve this major fatigue problem, this chronic exhaustion that I could not shake? And ultimately she had 2 solutions for me. which I don't really consider solutions. One was hormonal birth control, and number two was Xanax, an anti-anxiety medication. And I was like, these two things aren't going to solve my chronic fatigue problem at all. And I remember sitting in my car that day, I was having my own little moment, kind of like a little pity party. Like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to figure this out? And looking at these scripts that I never planned to fulfill or fill up, and knowing, one, that there had to be so many other women, whether they were 30 years old like I was at the time, or 40 or 50 or 25, like there had to be millions of us struggling with fatigue and exhaustion issues, and really not having a game plan for what to do. And then two, I also knew that the solutions that a lot of us were being given weren't going to actually solve the problem, and potentially, in even some instances, make it worse. And so in that moment, in that defining moment, knowing that I had been a researcher, knowing that I was a practitioner, I wanted to be a part of the solution. I wanted to not only have hormone literacy for myself, but I also wanted other women to understand their bodies as well, so that when we did have shifts, when our hormones were speaking to us, when we did not know, like when we did know something was going on in our bodies, we could be able to speak into what was going on and then be able to have the knowledge to make empowered decisions moving forward. And so that is what I've been doing for well over a decade now, in the form of books and podcasts and events and speaking. I mean, anything and everything. Research regarding women's hormone health has been my focus for over a decade.
Yeah, and this podcast is all about mental health. So a lot of people might wonder, why am I talking to somebody about hormones? But what a lot of people don't realize, and what I see all the time in practice, is women in their mid 30s to 50s coming in saying, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and I've been given anti-anxiety and antidepressants, but not understanding that it's their hormones that are causing those issues, kind of like what you just said. So given that this is a mental health podcast, can you talk a little bit about the impact that hormonal imbalance can have on our mood and our anxiety levels? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And I will speak into the specific hormone issues, but I also want to just speak into really quickly, before I dive into these beautifully sensitive chemical messengers, is that our hormones are rarely, if ever, trying to sabotage us. That is not their intention. They are doing the best they can with what they got in the moment that they're in. And they are constantly fluctuating and shifting and changing and binding to receptor sites based on what is going on in our external environment, what's happening in our world. And so I want to just speak into, I know so often we're so quick to blame the hormones for the hot flashes and the anxiety and the depression and the mood swings and and the brain fog and all the things that come with it. And yes, they are powerful chemical messengers. So they are eliciting these effects. But I also want to speak into the fact that there are root causes that actually drive these hormones to be imbalanced. And those big root causes are going to be trauma, are going to be triggering up that stress response system, where we're feeling flooded with cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. We're in fight or flight mode. That happens to us all the time, especially in today's world. Food, nutrition plays a major role, especially massive blood sugar swings. If we're in a state where we had a major blood sugar surge, let's say we jumped all the way to like 140 milligrams per deciliter. Well, the body has to compensate for that and flood the system with insulin. And then you plummet down to like 60 milligrams per deciliters. Your brain's going to think, oh my gosh, we have really low blood sugar right now. We need something to eat. We need to stabilize this, and sends craving signals to the body, like get some carbs in you. You can imagine this becomes like a major yo-yo effect. And that absolutely has major impact on our mood, on our anxiety levels, all of this. So just food in its own right, just sugar. I mean, of one example of food, not even inflammatory foods, plays a role here. Also, our toxic load, what we're breathing, what we're slathering, all these things. I grabbed a natural sunscreen this morning, thinking that it was a natural sunscreen. It was really great advertising, and I think my husband had bought it, and I didn't look at the ingredients because I was just like, I'm pretty sure if my husband got it, it's safe. Now, it's not the one we use for the baby, but I was like, mostly every single sunscreen in our house. But then I was like, you know what? Let me just check the ingredients after I put it on. And sure enough, it had some major endocrine disrupting ingredients. And I was like, ah. And so I grabbed a towel, a washcloth, and just started wiping it off because I was like, because I'm still breastfeeding. So I didn't want those endocrine disruptors to get into my son, and also not to get into me. So again, endocrine disruptors in terms of toxins. And then the other thing that I'm concerned with is like other nutrient deficiencies. This is a huge one for women as well. And when we're not well nourished, our hormones suffer. We can't make the building blocks to build our hormones. We can't drive liver detoxification processes to metabolize hormones. And so when we look at hormone disruption, we also have to look under the hood and ask ourselves, why? And what is the cause for these crazy PMS symptoms? What is the cause for these mood swings on the first day of my cycle? Why am I struggling with anxiousness, into my 40s and in early perimenopause? We have to ask ourselves, like, what could be the root cause trigger for those imbalances? So those are the root causes. I can also then get into the imbalances. Would you like me to do so?
Yeah, yes, please.
Awesome. Okay, one of the big ones, probably the biggest. I talked about insulin. Insulin, massive player here. And when insulin is constantly having to be fired up, and blood sugar levels are swinging up and down, which happens when we're snacking all the time, or we need a treat to manage our exhaustion and tiredness in the middle of the day, or to manage our moods, or whatever it may be. We are sending messages to the brain that we need more substrates. We need more sugar, carb-driven substrates. And what we know is that can drive mood swings, that can drive irritability, that can even drive anxiety. So one of the things we should be always looking at is one of the most powerful hormones that we don't even think about when we think about hormones is insulin, and really stabilizing insulin levels by focusing on what a friend of mine calls 3-meal magic, which is making sure that you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but without snacks, and making sure that those are rich in high protein, healthy fats, and lots of fiber in the form of green leafy vegetables and veggies in general. And if we can stick to that, we can stabilize our blood sugar levels and not have these crazy mood crashes throughout the day that can really just wreck us, and we don't even notice it. I was on a major sugar roller coaster for years. So that's one. And it has major implications on our menstrual cycle as well. But the hormone that I find that a lot of us really feel like we are missing, we take for granted, is going to be progesterone. Now, progesterone is a stress protective hormone. It is our calm and relaxation hormone. But here's the thing about progesterone is we only get it if we experience what I call the main event in our menstrual cycle, and that is ovulation. So we ovulate usually half of our cycle. Let's say we have a 28-day cycle. We ovulate on day 13, 14, 15. It's not a perfect science. Our bodies are biology, so it's constantly shifting and changing. But let's just say 14 because that's kind of the average. So on day 14, we ovulate, and that is what I call the main event. And when we ovulate, we release that little egg, and the corpus luteum forms after that. And this corpus luteum is made of all kinds of nutrition and cholesterol. It's like this yummy nourishment that literally excretes progesterone. Now, and then we move into the luteal phase of our menstrual cycle. That's after day 14. So literally the second you ovulate, progesterone is cranking. Now, depending on how well you're ovulating, you could have a robust amount of progesterone, which, yes, it's very rare that I meet women who have too much progesterone. Usually women have too little progesterone, including me. I'm included in that conversation for sure. And so as progesterone is rising in the first week of that luteal cycle, I think it's day 14 to day 19 or day 20, it's rising, and we peak around day 20. And then it starts to drop. Starts to go down. And that's that week before our menstrual cycle. That's that PMS time where some of us don't have PMS, probably because we have robust progesterone levels. Others of us, if that progesterone was dismal, not enough, it'll start dropping quicker, and we will begin to feel those signs and symptoms. And the reason for this is that progesterone, typically, it's binding to receptor sites in the brain, calming our mood. It's like a natural GABA in a lot of ways. And when it's robust, we experience that, like that week leading up to our menstrual cycle, that week leading up to our period. Honestly, I don't even notice if we have robust progesterone. But if we don't, We notice in the mood swings. I know for me, girl, that's when I know my progesterone levels are low. I am Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You know what I'm saying? I could switch on a dime. And so, and I always know, I'm like, okay, this is a great indicator to tell me that my hormones are off. My progesterone is probably lower than it should be, and estrogen's probably being unopposed in this particular scenario. Other things to be looking out for, we get cravings again because our stress resilience plummets. Again, no progesterone, we're more susceptible to triggering off that stress response system. We're more susceptible to someone saying the wrong thing to us at the wrong time, and we get triggered by it. And so really important to be paying attention to that particular dynamic right there, the progesterone to estrogen dynamic. Another hormone that I'm always mindful of when it comes to imbalances is cortisol. Very easy. It's the hormone that is responding to us firing off that stress response system. And if we are finding ourselves triggered over a bunch of things, like I'll be honest with you, I'll just share a little something that happened this morning, literally a couple seconds before getting on. My husband was up really, really late last night. We've both been up really late. We've been up with the baby. He's 6 months old. He and I have very little resilience right now because we're so sleep deprived. In particular, he was very sleep deprived. He slept in until about 5 minutes before I was getting on this show. And this show, I'm in my studio, which is also our bedroom. And so he is getting ready, and it's about to go on. I'm about to jump on this, and he hasn't left the bedroom. He's doing things, moving things around. And he always waits till the very last minute to leave the room before I jump on a show. And I have a really difficult time getting centered. And I was like, I don't know if you know, but I get a little anxious, a little kind of revved up when you're still in the room, literally 1 minute before I have to go live. And I said, I would love it if you would get up just a little bit earlier and get out of the room so that I can be focused on the interview and not focused on whether you're going to leave the room or not. And so that fired up my little stress response system. And so I grabbed an essential oil, I breathed it in, I got centered for like 30 seconds and then jumped on. And so, we have to be able to recognize these moments. But when you're sleep deprived, when you're nutrient deficient, it's much easier to fire off that system and then feel revved up. And then over time, just feel moody and anxious and overwhelmed, which I think a lot of us are experiencing right now. Maybe not the sleep deprivation piece, but definitely the overfiring of that stress response system.
I think a lot of people are sleep deprived because of COVID. Their routines are off. They're staying up too late. They might be doom scrolling. They might be just going online all the time and not going to bed on time. So that does make a difference. And I also address that in a lot of different podcast episodes. But you mentioned that a lot of us are low in progesterone. And so especially when we're going through perimenopause and menopause, is hormonal replacement therapy the only option, or can you do it with like essential oils and other things as well? Are there some other solutions? Because you are the queen of essential oils. So
it is true. And I did use it for my little moment. I was like, I got to get real clean. I got to get centered. I got to get grounded. Alex, my husband, just kind of lit me up a little bit. I was like, I got to get that back in line. And like, how do you quickly do that? Right? Breath work is great. Meditation is great. I love essential oils with breath work. They're so fast. But I want to answer your question. I have a little blend, and actually it flew off the it flew off the table, but I was literally coming online to you and I was like, well, there it goes. I used tangerine, a combination of tangerine, lavender, and frankincense. And so it's in a little roller. It's literally, I can't reach it. It's on the floor over there. In a really pretty bottle. It's like this beautiful ombre pink and red and orange bottle. It's really beautiful. And it just like, even just grabbing the bottle makes me feel better because it's so pretty. And I'm just like, and my body knows, oh, that bottle, that shiny little pretty bottle, she's going to relax our central nervous system real quick with that bottle. And so it's so fascinating, like your body, it's kind of like that Pavlov response, right? Where your body just grabbing the oil blend, my body was like, all right, it's time to relax. Relájase, as we like to say in our house, relax in Spanish. And so, yes, so that the essential oils are phenomenal. But yeah, progesterone can happen in women even under perimenopause or in early perimenopause, even in our 20s. A couple of causes for low progesterone. I was actually just recording my own podcast on this a couple days ago. Hypothyroid, which ding, 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 I have. PCOS, which is an insulin-driven concern, a metabolic issue that affects our ovaries and affects our menstrual cycle. So PCOS, low body fat and overworking out can also cause low progesterone as well, and ovulatory cycles, which can be caused by really low. I think women have to have 12% body fat or more in order for our menstrual cycles to run. So if you're dipping into the 10% or lower, which is really hard for us to do, but it can be done, you will lose your you'll lose your cycle. And I've known women where that's happened too. And then ovulatory cycles, and there's a lot of reasons for that. That's when we are skipping ovulation. And again, no ovulation, no progesterone. And one of the times where we start to skip ovulation is in perimenopause. Right? Your ovaries, they are sassy and they are divas in their own right. And 1 month, your brain could be sending a message to the ovaries like, hey, follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone are just sending major messages to the ovaries. Shoot off that egg. And your ovaries are like, no, I'm not going to do it this month. I don't feel like it. And then you get no progesterone, and so that's where we start to see that decrease in progesterone levels. In perimenopause is when you're skipping your cycle, and that's your ovaries deciding that that's what they're going to do that week or that month. And then even into our mid to late 30s, into our early 40s, just naturally we start decreasing at progesterone. And I'm seeing it earlier and earlier because as you're speaking into with the pandemic and post-pandemic, we're sleep deprived, we're nutrient deficient, we're burned out. All of these things contribute to low progesterone levels as well. And so one of the things that I see the most of in women, if they've been stressed, if they've been overworked, if they've had massive to-do lists, they're taking care of everybody else, one of the first hormones that are going to start to decline are going to be progesterone in that luteal phase. And the symptoms that are going to show up are going to be mood swings, PMS symptoms, bloating, anxiousness, sleeplessness. All of these types of issues are going to pop up because we are deficient in progesterone. And I've seen thousands of labs where low progesterone, it's very, very typical.
What's the natural solution besides hormonal replacement?
Yes. So I always want to start with lifestyle. I think lifestyle is going to be such a major player here. It's going to be filling in your nutrient gaps, using really important supplements, things like vitamin D3, vitamin C, a activated methylated B vitamin complex. Zinc is going to be huge. Like I would say 15 milligrams to 25 milligrams. If you know you're zinc deficient, I would definitely boost it to 25 to 30 milligrams. Magnesium glycinate, especially at night before going to bed. And then I would also be looking at herbs. I would also be looking at ashwagandha and rhodiola to manage that stress response system. These are powerful adaptogenic herbs, or even holy basil. And then chasteberry, also known as Vitex, I would be taking it in the second phase of your cycle, in the luteal phase. And what's so great about Vitex and Vitex or chasteberry, whatever you want to call it, in that second start of your, like after ovulation or count on day 15 and moving into your cycle, into your period, in about 60 to 90 days, you should see a major shift there. So I would start with that. I'd also start with foods that are going to feed your ovaries, are going to feed your ovulation cycle. So healthy fats, good omegas, citrus fruits like oranges and kiwis, lots of making sure that you're getting great protein, the green leafy vegetables, the color of the rainbow. All of these really well-nourished foods are going to help boost progesterone levels as well. And then also the self-care and getting enough sleep. All of those things are going to be super, super critical. Those are the things that I would recommend first and foremost before I would ever consider moving into bioidentical hormones. Now, if you do all the lifestyle things, you're meditating, you're sleeping, you're eating healthy, you're supplementing. I talk about this all in my newest book, The Essential Oils Menopause Solution. Maybe you're using some essential oils, but you're still finding that you don't have that resilience. You're struggling you've got hot flashes, you're not sleeping right. Then it may be worth bringing in during perimenopause a little bit of bioidentical, like basically natural progesterone. It can be a serum, it can be a cream. You're looking at 2%. You're rubbing it in your inner arm or your thighs or your stomach, and that will really help to kind of stave off the anxiousness, the mood swings, the PMS symptoms. And you want to be doing it again in the luteal phase of your cycle, because that's when you have progesterone. But again, it's a last resort. I would say that really only 30% of women in the US are on bioidenticals or hormone replacement. Most women are able to manage a lot of their symptoms with lifestyle changes. And I also find that if you are going to be on bioidenticals, there's a decent window, like I'd say a 5-year window, where bioidenticals are really protective and supportive. But then after that 5-year window, we find that they actually become more detrimental. And so that's usually as you're entering into menopause, into the first 5 years. So I would say like 49 to 54 or 50 to 55. It's a good year if you just a good 5 years if you decide you want to be on hormones. You want to stay within that window, because we find that after 5 years, it's diminishing returns.
So interesting. The other issue that's a lot of women that are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s are dealing, and you've mentioned this, is the increase in insulin or insulin resistance in our bodies. Can you talk a little bit about the impact insulin resistance can have on our bodies, and then what we can do about it?
Absolutely. And what I will say is that bioidentical hormones, a lot of the symptoms that women are experiencing in perimenopause into menopause are actually driven by metabolic dysfunction, and low metabolic flexibility and insulin resistance. And unfortunately, bioidentical hormones aren't going to fix that. And so a lot of us, we go to the doctor's office thinking that a bioidentical or a synthetic hormone replacement is going to fix that issue, when it's like they're like strangers in the night. Not to say that these hormones can't be somewhat insulin protective, but it's not enough. Adding extra estrogen in to create a little bit more of that protection, it probably isn't going to overcome the lifestyle shifts that need to happen. So as we naturally decline progesterone and estrogen, again, as I mentioned earlier, progesterone is naturally stress protective and estrogen is naturally insulin protective. And as these decline or these start to shift in kind of roller coaster, we become more insulin resistant. Now, note that there's other reasons why we're becoming insulin resistant as well. Again, sleep is a major concern. Sleep deprivation is huge here. Stress, if we're triggering that stress response system, cortisol, especially if it is whacked out, like it is overfiring, it's going to co-elevate insulin as well. So basically, every time you have a kind of clutch the pearls moment, you feel yourself flooding with that fight or flight symptom or that system, insulin's going to also be co-elevated as well. So it's like eating a cupcake, but not actually eating a cupcake at all. Like that's kind of how the body responds. So something to be mindful of. But when we are elevating insulin, that causes us to gain weight, that causes us to experience brain fog, definitely can contribute to mood swings and anxiousness. It causes us to feel exhausted and tired. Belly fat isn't a concern as well. And so these are a lot of the symptoms that I see that women are dealing with in perimenopause and menopause. So I do have some recommendations that I can make, because as our body's pivoting, things that were working in our 20s, even in our early 30s, maybe even in our mid 30s, just isn't working for us in our 40s. And the more that we understand that our body is just shifting and pivoting based on the changes of our endocrine system, the better prepared we can be. And the sooner that we can be doing these changes, the better. So if you could start in your mid 30s, even better. But the great thing is if you're listening to this and you're 49 or you're 54 and you're like, well, I'm not 35 anymore, what can I do now? The beautiful thing is your body is so adaptive. It is always ready to make changes. It's always ready to become more metabolically flexible. So here's 5 things that I would recommend. If we just naturally know that we're gradually moving to insulin resistance and we're going to start having some metabolic concerns, then these are all big wins for us. First things first is making sure that we are maintaining our circadian rhythms, right? Not only do we cycle every 28 days or so, we also cycle every 24 hours. And so making sure that we've got good sleep hygiene is going to be critical. So just like my baby has a sleep routine, you got to have a sleep routine, right? Making sure that you've got blackout curtains. Maybe you have a noise machine. Maybe you're using essential oils in your diffuser. You are taking some supplements to go to bed, magnesium glycinate, taurine, melatonin, hops, whatever that may be that you're using to help kind of ease the brain. Potential journaling, reading, sleep meditation, all of these things. Got to figure out what's going to work for you. Turning off the electronics so that your brain isn't overstimulated, and just making sure that you're getting that dark, deep sleep experience. And then in the morning when you wake up, to fire up that cortisol awakening response, I recommend that you get outside as soon as possible so that your brain can recognize that it's sunshine, it's nature, it's vitamin D, you're firing off those mitochondria, and that's going to really help maintain insulin sensitivity. So increasing circadian rhythm, and doing a lot of self-care around that. Next, I am a big proponent of some level of intermittent fasting. And so it could be a 12-hour fast, but where we get into that really fat burning mode, insulin sensitivity mode is 13 to 15 hours. And ideally, if you can even do this, let's say you do a 13-hour fast, and if you can stop eating by 7, let's say you have a 10 p.m. bedtime, I always love it if women can have a 3-hour gap between their last meal and going to sleep, because that allows the lymphatic system, our glial cells, to shrink, and for a cerebral spinal fluid to come on into the brain and clean up shop. We need that rest and recovery. But if we are digesting food and we have to allocate resources to the digestive system before bed, our brain just can't go in and do the deep cleaning that it needs to do every single night. So ideally, let's say you stop eating at 7, you go to bed at 10, you wake up, you go outside, maybe you take a nice walk, you do a little mini exercise, and then you break your fast at 8 a.m., which is a 13-hour fast. That will help to create more insulin sensitivity in the body. And it'll put you in fat burning mode as well, which is awesome. Then in the morning, as you break your fast, I think it's super critical that we focus on metabolic boosting foods. So I always recommend having a metabolic boosting routine. And start the morning with that walk, and maybe drinking a big 20-ounce glass of water. You could even make a belly bloat water with like cucumber and ginger and lemon, mint, have it in the fridge, and then have a 20-ounce glass of that. That will supercharge the liver and the digestive system and literally de-bloat you. Then I recommend, if you're going to drink coffee or tea, whatever that may be, swap out sugar for cinnamon. Cinnamon is phenomenal for stabilizing blood sugar levels, and it's metabolically boosting, and it tastes delicious. And it's just one more way that we are decreasing the amount of sugar. For over a month, I wore a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, because I wanted to dial in my blood sugar levels. And I've been doing coffee and cinnamon, or tea and cinnamon, for well over a decade. And what was so fascinating is that I usually wake up, my blood sugar levels are around 75 milligrams per deciliter, which is exactly what I want. Even if I have a tea with cinnamon or a coffee with cinnamon, it doesn't change my insulin or my blood sugar levels at all. But if I were to add creamer and sugar, best believe, with nothing else in my system, my blood sugar would shoot up to probably 120 milligrams per deciliter, which puts me in the danger zone. So making sure that you are swapping out cinnamon for sugar, a great swap there. And then also eating a protein-rich breakfast, whether it is a protein shake, a smoothie, eggs for breakfast, leftovers from last night. We want 25 to 30 milligrams of protein, healthy carbs like veggies, and healthy fats like an avocado or olive oil. And that just sets your body up for more metabolic boosting awesomeness for the rest of your day. So those are the things that I would implement to help reduce insulin resistance in women in their 40s and beyond.
Wow, that was such valuable advice. I know you're very well known for your essential oil best-selling books. And so are there any specific oils that you would recommend for hormonal balance?
Yes, absolutely. So one of my go-to, I call it the Beyonce of hormone essential oils. She's such a star, is clary sage. Now, clary sage is a beautiful, you've seen sage plants everywhere. They're so beautiful, but they're so medicinal as well. And so clary sage is great for menstrual cramps. It's great for hot flashes. It is great for helping to reduce any congestion within our ovaries and uterus. So applying it over the ovaries and uterus is super, super great with a little bit of coconut oil. It is amazing for sleep. It's also amazing for mood. So I wanted to share a blend that I've used with women all over the world, like just thousands of women. It's called my Superwoman Blend, and it's 12 drops of clary sage. It's a more higher concentration, but it's in a roller, which I normally, like I said, I can see it. I usually have it at the desk. So I could show you, but it's just a 10 ml roller. You can find them on Amazon anywhere. And it is 12 drops of clary sage, 10 drops of lavender. Lavender is an adaptogenic oil. All essential oils are adaptogenic, but lavender is great for mood support, sleep. It's great for helping to reduce histamines. It is great for supporting cortisol. So it's just a wonderful, beautiful hormone supporting oil. So 10 drops of lavender. I call it the jack of all trades. Like she just shows up and does all, it's like the ultimate mom. She just does all the things like, you know, then geranium. Geranium is it's like the poor person's rose. It's very effective, very powerful. It's great for things like PCOS, endometriosis, even insulin. It's also great for loving the liver. So 5 drops of geranium, 5 drops of cedarwood. Cedarwood, again, a wood oil, phenomenal here for overall just relaxation, mood support, sleep, and helping to support progesterone levels. And then last is going to be a ylang-ylang. Ylang-ylang is a heart-centered oil, probably one of my go-to favorite oils for anxiety. But it's also great for boosting libido, boosting testosterone. So I love this oil. So I add it to this as well. And combined, you can apply it over the ovaries. You can wear it on the wrist, on the neck, because it's really showing up in a multitude of ways. And it smells amazing. It smells so good. I have met women in airports around the world with this blend and just having such great success. And so that's probably one of my absolute favorite essential oils because it combines my top 5 oils for the endocrine system.
And you use that every day?
Every day. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And I know you just released your new book, The Essential Oils Menopause Solution. Can you tell me more about that book? Wow, beautiful.
You. I know it's Tiffany blue. Oh, when I saw this cover, I fell in love. So in love with the cover of this book. And you can definitely judge the cover and what's in it by the cover. So the goal of this book for me was hormone literacy. So often doctors don't even know when women are in perimenopause or menopause. It's infuriating. And when you go to your primary care practitioner, they're not hormone experts. They're just not. It's like going to the hardware store and expecting milk and eggs and being angry at the hardware store owner and like, where is the milk? And he's like, I'm so sorry. It's just you're in the wrong store. You got to go to Safeway. You got to go to Vons, wherever store is, so oftentimes we go to our primary and we're looking for this in-depth hormone information. And there's a good chance that they don't know if you're in perimenopause or not. And so I wanted women to have that hormone literacy of understanding what was happening. There's 4 phases of perimenopause that it's important that we know so that we can pivot according to what's going on with our bodies and then into menopause and beyond. Like, what does that even look like for us? It feels like so often we're kind of just shoot away once we get there. So how do we get the mindset and really take ownership of that new beautiful phase in our life? Then I dive into the symptoms that so many women are dealing with as they're navigating these phases, this 15-year journey. That's a big time in our lives. And it's a really important time in our lives. And so how do we navigate that? How do we navigate the fatigue and the sleep deprivation and the mood swings and the gut issues and the thyroid issues and the liver problem and all these things that are happening to us that no one's really sharing with us. No one's telling us. It could be your liver or, maybe your insulin levels are out of control. And so the more that we know about this, the better. And so I lay out all of the why. I really dial in that hormone literacy in a way that's really digestible, but then lay out essential oils, supplements, self-care, protocols, everything in part 2 of the book. And then part 3 is my 21-day hormone makeover. And that's literally from start to finish. Who you are on day 1 is not who you'll be on day 21. Like, you will be a different person. We reduce inflammation. We reduce inflammatory markers. We get insulin back in line. We reduce excess cortisol. I mean, all of it. We heal the gut. We heal the liver. We build the self-care in. I mean, it's this beautiful program that over 3,000 women I beta tested with. And I just I had a woman reach out to me. Her hemoglobin A1C, which is an inflammatory marker for insulin, went from a 9.1, which is diabetes, type 2 diabetes, straight up, down to a 5. Where she was almost 5.5 is where we go into prediabetes. Like she was able to get that marker down to 5 with that program. And I just, I see these types of things all the time. If we can really love up on our body and love up on that endocrine system, we can set ourselves up for so much success. And that's literally what this book is. It's a blueprint for us just loving up on our bodies, nourishing our bodies so that we navigate these beautiful years with just a lot of ease and grace.
Wow, that sounds so amazing. So knowing what you know now as a functional practitioner, what advice do you have for your younger self about hormones and hormonal imbalance?
I would say that one advice for myself is track my cycle. Know my, have that literacy of knowing my menstrual cycle. It's a fifth vital sign for my body. I didn't do that until my mid 30s. And then also just to be gentle with myself and to know that I know my body better than anyone else. I'm the CEO of my body, and that when I'm educated, I can make empowered decisions about what's right for me. And every single woman, we have that capability. And that's really been my mission, is the more we know about our bodies, the better that we can make informed decisions about what's happening with our body.
Perfect advice. It's so true, because a lot of people don't understand how important it is to balance their hormones. So thank you so much for all that information. Where can people find you and connect with you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Mariza, DrMariza. I also have a women's hormone podcast that is devoted to hormone literacy. I mean, I do deep dives into topics on PCOS, endometriosis, the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, the 4 phases of perimenopause, how we can plan for, post hysterectomies, anything like these types of dying questions that so many women want to know. We dive really deep into that in the show. We have over 3 million downloads on that show right now, and so that's a great place to connect. And then my books are on Amazon.
I haven't had a chance to get your latest book, but I have listened to your essential oil book, and it's just amazing information. And I followed your podcast, great information. I encourage everybody to get your books, to listen on your podcast. You're a wealth of information. I so appreciate your time. I know you have a lot to do being a new mom. And so thank you so much. And I appreciate your time and being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Dr. Mariza is such a wealth of information when it comes to essential oils and hormonal balance. Learn more about Dr. Mariza by visiting transforminganxiety.com/26. And be sure to download your free PDF of Dr. Mariza's Superwoman Oil Blend recipe. When you're there, go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts about this episode. As a reminder, the information presented on this podcast is for educational purposes only. As always, be sure to work with a trained holistic or integrative medical doctor before starting any of the treatments mentioned during this interview. If you haven't already, you can show support for the Mental Health Break podcast by subscribing wherever you're tuning in from today. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or a 5-star rating, since that'll help others find the podcast. We have some great interviews lined up, and you don't want to miss a single episode. Subscribe today so you get notified when new episodes drop. I can't wait to see you here next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.